So, with all the preparation out of the way, today is the day we finally get to do a little bit of dungeon crawling. So, as I mentioned in the last video, the party were equipped with the bare minimum for armor, weaponry, etc. So I've outfitted them accordingly, given them all the things that you need: backpacks, rations, lighting sources, etc, etc. I won't bore you with the details, they'll come up I'm sure as we play. But more importantly, we've given a name to our party mule, and thanks to one of the viewers, a certain MB Iceman 73, we've decided to dub the party mule Cuddy. And so on with the show. We are using the rule cyclopedia, we are using graph paper, but before we get to the dungeon proper, we've got a little bit of overland travel. So I've worked out that from Castle Blackstone, where the party is currently quartered, it is a full day's travel pretty much to get to the pit, our first starter dungeon, let's call it that. We won't be making any encounter checks because the way is as civilized as this part of the world can get, this tiny little pocket of civilization in the wilds of the Stormlands, because there are many well-equipped and disciplined horsemen, men-at-arms and the like patrolling these lands and patrolling the path that leads to the dungeon itself, right up to the foot of the Gloom Crags. Now, in his wisdom, Lord Blackstone, having lost several men, has decided, well, no one under his direct employ will set foot without his leave, but he has set 2 guards to be watching from a discreet distance the entrance to the pit, and if anything emerges, they are to mount up and ride with the greatest of swiftness back to report this. As to date, nothing has emerged, including his initial warbands. All seems safe and canny for the time being. But now with this new element being the party, of their own volition deciding to explore and pillage, if there's anything to pillage in said dungeon, he said, that's fine, you have my blessing and the church's, but if at all possible, he would be, as would the church and the families of the missing men at arms, would be very grateful if their remains could be located and brought back. Not only would this generate a point of favor, there will also be a gold piece reward in it for the party. And so with all that out of the way, it's time to go overland, out of the safety of Castle Blackstone, across the fields, through the foothills of the Gloom Crags, and into the depths of that shadowy dungeon, the pit. Now the theme of the pit is an ancient abandoned mine. So once the party arrive, they will rest up during the night, where it's still relatively safe, let's say, so no unnecessary random encounters. And then once dawn breaks, they will descend into the dungeon. But first, they will leave their packs with their rations, because you see, with my starting funds, after buying everything that I had to buy, so you know, hammer, spikes, backpacks, all that stuff I mentioned, I could only afford standard rations. And as soon as you take standard rations into a dungeon, they spoil. So I'll leave that with the men up here, and then onwards we go, down into the dungeon. One thing before we get into it is marching order, an important factor in D&D, especially when dungeon crawling. So each of the characters is keyed to one of these colored little tokens here. So up front we have red will be Auric, blue will be Billiam, green will be Helig, yellow will be Mavros, nice and sandwiched in so that no gribblies can get at him, being very, very squishy. Also rather squishy, but somewhat less vulnerable due to her high dexterity and leather armor, will be Subdwella, or Dolly. And last but not least, we have Cordelia, the second of the clerics, to provide a little bit of oomph in case something does sneak up from behind. And then of course this thing here, represented rather crudely, will be Cuddy, the party mule. And so before I start getting into mapping and stuff, I might just give you a quick warning that the initial stuff I'll just do off camera and just start rolling once we come across something of note, such as a monster encounter, traps, or a special room or something to that effect. Anyway, onwards. And we've stepped forward, and it's been nothing but a big long ass corridor. And of course, upon hitting the second turn of the first expedition in our first dungeon. Bam, we get a wandering monster encounter, and it ends up being skellies. And so what I've done here is I've moved forward to where things actually get interesting, because despite this being dim light, you can still encounter things from 2d6 times 10 feet away. And it was 80 feet in this case, because here on the map I have 10 by 10 foot squares. But once we get into the tactical situation, as we have here, each square is actually 5 by 5 feet for a little bit of granularity. This little marker actually is the demarcation line of the light afforded by both Billiam's torch. Well, just Billiam's torch, because further back here we have Mavros, and he is holding a lantern. I think it's always good to have a bit of redundancy. All right. Let's get into it then. So this is the first proper round. Got my handy dandy dice tower here. So the black die will be initiative for the skellies, even though it should probably be white, but never mind, I'm just going to stick to white being the players, the party. Alright, skellies go first. I'm not sure if monsters run or whether undead can even run, but they're just going to move the distance given here. So 5, 10, 15, 20 feet is the distance that skeletons shamble forth. Alright, and so now we have them within sight, and everyone with a ranged weapon, we'll let them have it. Right, so quickly checking up in the rule cyclopedia ranges of all weapons. I duly noted them all down on each character's sheet, and as it turns out, the skellies are just out of short range for the spear that Auric will cast at the one directly ahead. That being Auric, that being the skelly directly ahead. So yeah, that's the skellies' movement done. Alright, so their AC is 7, I believe. So Auric will not get the bonus for short range with his spear toss. So 50% chance to hit. 19, most certainly a hit. And now he uses his strength modifier because it is a thrown weapon. 1. So that'll be a grand total of 4 damage. One thing I didn't do is roll the skelly's hit points. So what I'm going to do for brevity's sake is just roll once, and that's what the hit points will be for each skelly. So it could be all high, it could be all low. And it will be, oh wait, it's D8, isn't it? Okay, wow. And these are particularly mouldering, weakened old skellies. So the first one is taken out of action, and that is the first casualty, on the bad guy's side at least, of the campaign. Bam! The spear just passes right through its skull, shatters it, I suppose. I mean, in this edition, skellies don't take half damage from non-bludgeoning weapons, so that's lucky for me, I suppose. So onto Billiam, he has no ranged weapon. He drops his torch and draws his sword. Now I think that dropping your torch should have a tiny chance of it being extinguished. So let's say 1 on the roll of a d10. Well, it gutters momentarily with a 2, but stays lit. So this whole area is still illuminated as presently shown here. Alright, then moving down, we've got Helig with his sling. So it should be just a 12 to hit for him. Yay, that's a hit with an 18. A whopping d4 damage. That's fine, because these little skellies have only got 2 hit points each, so we'll just make it the first one in sight. And moving back, we've got Mavros. He's not going to cast his sleep spell, being skellies. Oh, what am I doing? Rolling d4, jumping the gun here. 18! Wow, dice are rolling hot. Let's hope they don't do the same for the monsters. And 3, yes! The wizard takes out his very first enemy as well. Bam! See, it's good once they started letting wizards actually be useful other than casting spells. So at these low levels, even 3 damage goes a long way. Excellent. And then moving back, we've got Dolly here, sub-dollar. 6, even with her dex bonus, with her short bow, that is most certainly a miss. Yes, that's dice for you. Unpredictable. And then last we have Cordelia. 17, yep, that is a hit. And once again, just enough to take out another skelly. Bam! Kicking asses and taking names today. Alright, so far so good. Now, I think because I've eliminated the first few ranks, so to speak, of the skellies, they still won't quite be able to reach the party. Alright, so next round of combat. Probably the final round, I imagine. Alright, skellies go first. They might actually strike a blow for the forces of evil. 5, 10, 15. Because we're doing everything by the book. So first of all is morale. Second is movement. Third is ranged or missile combat. Fourth is magic. Then fifth is hand-to-hand combat, melee as it's known. 5, 10, 15, I guess 20. And that one moves up there. Alright, here we go. And just because I can, I'm going to use the red die. I don't know how well it rolls, but this black die has just been rolling insanely well. I'm superstitious like that. Right, so this skelly is attacking Auric. So Thaco is 19, his armor class is 0, so just need a 19 plus. Which he gets. Oh goodness. Alright, and once again, because it's us easing into the campaign, I'm not even gonna let it use powerful weapons. When I say powerful, I mean anything beyond D4. So it's just using a club, maybe a shank of its former victims or companions, who knows. At any rate, it's using a big old bone club, and it deals 3 damage. Ouch. That puts him at basically half hit points, having 7 with his 8 constitution, which kind of sucks for a fighter. In fact, more than kinda, it actually sucks a lot, but he hopefully makes up for that a little bit with his incredible strength. I have no healing though. First level clerics have no healing whatsoever other than the healing skill, which we'll see how it goes post battle. Maybe we can press on. The battle continues though. Second skelly. Attacking Billiam here, needing an 18. Alright, that one is a miss with an 11. And that's it for the skellies. Alright, so now our first ever round of hand-to-hand for the campaign. We'll start with Auric, looking for revenge. He does have a bastard sword in one hand and a horn shield in the other. As I said in the previous video, if you actually spend a weapon skill point on the horn shield, you can make an offhand attack with no penalty. So that's what I'm going to do here with both frontline fighters. So I think black will be his sword, red will be the shield. Well, that was an 11 until I bumped it. They both hit though. So that's a minimum of 2 damage, no matter what. So that one's gone. And then Billiam will do the same. Okay, only hit with his shield, but minimum of 2 damage, or 3 damage really. And then it's just a hail of arrows and sling stones. Actually, I should be keeping track of the arrows expended. So what was that? I think that was just 3 rounds, so 3 arrows. A lot of keeping track of things. I was talking to the camera. I'm not one of those that can chew bubble gum and walk at the same time, it seems. Well, we'll start with Helig with the sling. Yeah, so that's another thing I haven't really come to yet. But I've decided that anyone that is in hand-to-hand with a friendly won't be shot at. Simply for the fact that, you know, they're not static pawns, such as you see here. There's a fair bit of movement going on back and forth. And there's a good chance that you could hit your mate. I think I'll only allow that in dire circumstances and with a -4 penalty to make extra sure that they're not actually going to be hit. Well, your friends, that is. Anyway, attacking this one. 11, I think that's just a miss. And then we've got Mavros. 13, just hit. Will he get the finishing blow? Yes, he will, just. Even a lowly 2 is enough to destroy these rather wimpy skellies. And that is it for the very, very first encounter for the campaign. This is exciting, guys. No one died. So another house rule that I've applied since many, many years ago is arrows can be retrieved. So on the roll of 1 or 2, the arrow is destroyed, otherwise it's, well, lost for that matter. Otherwise the arrow is recovered. So she lost 3, 1 is gone. So I'll reduce that from her total and then note down the XP and we explore onwards. Alright, now with that first encounter out of the way and survived, this is the marching order, which I will try and maintain as much as possible. And this is what has been explored so far. So as explained, each of these squares is a 10 by 10 foot area. The torch light only reaches out 30 feet, which I actually think is kind of generous to begin with, because if you've ever actually lit a torch in pitch dark, it's probably half that, possibly a little bit more if you count dim light, which they've done in succeeding editions of D&D, but this one's nice and simple and that's why I'm playing it. Got enough on my plate as it is, being player and DM. And so the skellies came in out of the darkness, charged the party. Party dealt with them and noticed right at the edge of the torchlight a doorway. Now this is all generated using the sandbox generator, using the chapter for dungeons. So that's where we are. But before we continue, I will try and heal Billiam, who's been scratched by one of the skellies. Or should I say bonked or clobbered by one of their bone clubs. Both of the clerics don't have the greatest chance, so I'll just roll both at once and hope for the best. They need a 10 plus. Yay! So one of them healed him. And here's hoping we can get the full 3 hit points. Not quite. That's 2. Adventurers are very, very fragile at this level. Everything's terrifyingly scary. So let's say we got about there. So let's move 1, 2, 3. By the way, I've been keeping track of all this. I'm not sure if it's coming up on the camera, but I've got essentially a time tracker here for each turn. So every 2 turns, I check for wandering monsters. So every hour, a torch burns out and I need to light a new one. And every 4 hours, the lamp oil burns out and I need to refill it. And we move 90 feet per turn, which is ridiculous because putting it through a calculator, that ends up being like less than 0.1 or maybe slightly over 0.01, I think, of a mile per hour. And that's not even looking for secret doors. That's just plodding along, poking around for traps. In the book it says you stop, listen, so on, but I don't know, it just seems ridiculous to me. As it stands, I'll stick with it. So we'll continue on. So that'll move me 30 feet, leaving me another 60 feet of movement before the turn is up. And by the way, that battle would have taken 30 seconds, so not even a minute. So I'm not even going to bother keeping track of those. I'm going to be that anal retentive with the timekeeping. It's not like AD&D where a round is a minute, where each round actually does matter for things like torches and so on. So just off camera here, I have my very useful and compact little laptop, which does have a PDF of the sandbox generator, which I'm using to make this dungeon, as I mentioned before. So I will continue with the rolls here. Before I actually check that door, I'm going to just keep pressing forward. By the way, the reason this initial corridor is very long is because each time you roll for a corridor section, it's a section of 60 feet, and there could be multiples, and of course I rolled the maximum, so that's why we get this initial long ass corridor. But that's fine, it's supposed to be a mine, so you know, stands to reason. You find a seam of whatever it was that they were mining and you dig ahead. So now we roll a d8 apparently. 6. Ah, interesting. So we have another door. Now why they would put doors in a mine, I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's to trap mine gases and kind of act like a airlock of sorts. Cool. Alright, well that makes things simple. I think we will turn left, but before we do that, everyone in the party is going to have a go at listening. Oh yeah, by the way, the healing, like all skills in this game, the healing skill is essentially covered in about a paragraph of what, like 2 sentences or so. So nothing about time, nothing about equipment, nothing about anything other than what it does in rules terms. So I'm going to say that healing a character will take 10 minutes, you know, because you're going to clean their wounds, bandage them up, you know, ask them how they're feeling, tell them to turn and cough, all that kind of stuff. So speaking of which, that'll take another turn. And listening, I think will take at least a minute, because you want to listen at the door for a little while. But one thing I wanted to say is, another thing I forgot, is doors. I'm not going to use the doors table from the sandbox generator. I've got my own, just to simplify things. And that is that all doors will just simply be wooden things, rather crude, and there is a 10% chance that they are locked. So I will get my percentile die, or dice in this case, and roll. So for the left door, no, and for the door ahead, wow, it's actually locked. Interesting. Well, I'm glad that I put all the points I did into Dolly's pick locks skill, which is 50, I believe, or thereabouts. 55. So that's locked there. Let's try and pick it. It's quiet after all. That's oh wait, 69. Okay, so that's locked. Wow. Well, there you go. All right, makes things simple. Everyone's going to listen at the leftmost door there, and I think they hear on a 1. Oh yeah, picking locks. How long does that take? It's not like the movies where you just plug in your picks and hey presto, within seconds it's undone. Though with these old-timey medieval locks, maybe that's the case. I'm pretty sure that in AD&D 2nd edition, they go into how long it takes. At least, I think from memory, in the Thieves' Handbook, because every class got a handbook and they went into all the ins and outs of their abilities and so forth. Maybe I should spend a little time looking at that, or I could just make a call right now, being the experienced DM that I am. But let's see, do we hear anything? It seems that nobody hears anything. So there could be something behind that door, there might not be. Well, we know it's not locked. It's definitely stuck though. So we need to give it the old heave-ho. So we've got our 2 fighters. I think that because it's a big old door, both fighters turning sideways and putting their shoulders into it can do it at the same time. I don't think that there'll be sort of a force multiplier, so to speak. It'll just be 2 separate chances, which basically is that, I guess. So you add your strength bonus which will be the same for both, because even though Auric is technically stronger than Billiam, Billiam does have the muscle skill, which does give him another +1. So normally it's opened on a 5+ for a person without any modifier to their strength. But these are both, I was going to say strapping young lads, strapping middle-aged lads, so they'll do it on a 2+. Probably don't need both of them rolling, but who knows. You can always roll a 1. So no, they got it. Bam, it's opened. What's next? Well, what's next is, I guess, checking to see whether it's a room. So, apparently, in the Sounderbox generator, a door always opens to a room. So let's roll to see what kind of room we're dealing with here. 5. It's a small room. So that'll be D3 + 1 by D3 + 1 squares. So the first will be, I guess, the x-axis. Okay, so that's 40 feet. Yeah, 40 feet by 20 feet. Alright, so the question is it going to be central? I guess I should read this more. Well, I couldn't find anything here. Those of you veterans that have used the Soundbox generator, if I'm doing this wrong, so to speak, then tell me in the comments. It's all new to me. So what I'm going to do is just make it, what was it, 40? 1, 2, 3, 4 by 20, like so. So that door is now open. And now we find out what kind of room it actually is. Another D6 roll. 4. Special. Okay. So that's another asterisk, as I have deemed there will only be one special room for this dungeon. And so here we are. So this is a chamber that's blackened even further than the rest of the Darkstony dungeon. Amongst the detritus, cracks, crevices and pebbles and so forth, common to a mine or a dungeon in general, are what appears to be blackened, burnt fragments, shards, pieces if you will, of some gigantic egg. And the whole place has an alien stench to it that puts everyone ill at ease. And our wizard Mavros, being an apprentice of Sophos, essentially the court magician of Lord Blackstone, he knows that his tutor is interested in such esoteric artifacts. Perhaps they have some sort of alchemical or magical potential, even if they're not magical inherently themselves. So he'll gather a few of these and prefer them to his tutor. It should net the party a point of favor and a little bit of gold, which we'll get to once we get to it. So I should write that down before I forget. And so I've marked this as the egg shard chamber. And that brings us now to the problem at hand, being this locked door, which is old but still pretty sturdy. None of the party have axes, so we can't chop through it. I think bashing through it would just take too long and is ridiculous. The only other thing I can think of, well, we have two options the way I see it, is one, we do have lamp oil. It's moldy and damp down here, but with enough oil we could douse it, even set our remaining flasks to its base and set it on fire, burn it and just retreat a great distance, maybe even leave the dungeon, wait for as long as it takes for it to burn out and the smoke to clear somewhat, and then smash through it. Or we could get some of the iron spikes, hammer them into hook-like configurations, hammer them through the old wood, loop them around, tie a rope to both of them, attach the rope around the mule, and then with the aid of the strongest of the party, use the mule and the party's muscle power to at least pry off, break off, snap off a plank or two of the door, which then will make it a little bit easier to perhaps smash through it using warhammers and maces and the like. Now, I always try and approach this problem solving as a player, but then I have to be the arbiter as the DM. And I think that's actually not too bad an idea. That was one of the reasons I got the mule, mainly to just schlep around the treasures and other bits and pieces that I find in my adventuring. But old Cuddy here might be the party's savior in as far as pushing forward further through the dungeon. I think what I'll do is I'll search this chamber for secret passages, and if someone comes up with something, then we'll ask the Oracle whether there is indeed a secret passage. That could lead us around this problem of the locked door without having to mangle iron spikes and give our position away too much. Yeah, so we'll do that. So needing a 1. Alright, well, someone found something. Now the question is there a secret passage out of this room? That's where I, as a DM, have to make a decision and assign a percentile chance from 0 to 100%. And I don't know, let's just say it's a 25% chance there is indeed a secret passage out of this room. So here we go. That's 100. So absolutely no chance. Alright, well, after just wandering about the room, searching, picking things up, that'll be another turn. So now we've already spent 40 minutes in the dungeon, plus. Let's see if we have another wandering monster. No, we don't. But then the party will spend... see, this is the silly part. As if things weren't slow enough, it's actually a turn for each person to search a 10-foot by 10-foot area. So come what may, that'll take an hour and 20 minutes. So all up, 2 torches have been burnt. The lamp is still burning brightly though. I think I won't light another torch just yet until we start exploring again. But we do have a bunch of random encounter checks. The wandering monster checks. Keeps you on your toes, that's for damn sure. Stops you from wasting too much time. Well, we know for certainty that there's nothing here. So that'll be 1, 2, 3 more checks. Alright, first, nope. Second 20 minutes, nope. Third 20 minutes. No, that's a bit of luck there. Okay, so that's that sorted. This room's been pretty thoroughly searched. And then we've got this locked door here, as I was saying, is a bit of a problem. I mean, we also have another chance of finding something if we check for secret passages all the way down here. But I think that that's just going to be something I'll leave for later, much later if possible. No, I think I'll go with my idea of hammering in hooks through the wooden door with the iron spikes and then just, yeah, pulling at it. So each of these wooden doors, I imagine, would be made of some sort of sturdy wood, i.e. not pine, and it would be made out of slats. So if we could even partially break off one of those, we could then probably break up the door with ease after that. It'll just make a hell of a lot of noise. So anything beyond that door will be alerted to us. So let's say that both Auric and Billiam will do all the muscle work. Actually, Billiam, being the horse trainer, might actually be in charge of Cuddy the mule to make sure that he behaves. So the next strongest bloke is Helig, the cleric. So they'll be pulling along with the mule. And let's leave Cordelia and Mavros at the, or maybe just Cordelia at the rear, to make sure that nothing creeps up here, along with Dolly. And then we'll have Mavros right behind these two with his sleep spell ready in case there's a horde of monsters on the other side of that door. I guess I didn't listen at this door, did I? So let's have a listen before we start getting carried away. 2, 4, 6. So it's a 1 in 6 chance for humans. Okay, we have someone that heard something. Now the question is there something beyond that locked door? Well, let's roll on the table here for rooms. 5. So monsters. Alright, so there's a chance that whatever's there is heard. Just going to quickly check to see what kind of monster. So a 9. Alright, so a 9 on the room encounters table is a pack of zombies. 2d4 zombies to be precise. 2 hit die monsters. And we got 6 of them. They're also silent. Being undead, they make no noise as they just stand there forever, essentially, until they rot away. Kind of creepy. So yeah, I have no idea that there's zombies there. So as we go about all this business of hammering in spikes, we obviously alert the zombies to the presence of the party. So as soon as we make a breach, there'll be zombies, kind of like in Night of the Living Dead, poking their arms through in a great big swarm, trying to scratch at and get the party beyond. I guess I should roll for the room as far as its dimensions go. So that's another d6 roll, 5, another small room. So d3 plus 1. So it'll be 2, so that's 30 feet across. And 40 feet deep. So 30 across, 1, 2, 3, 40 deep. So it looks something like that. And there's 6 zombies in there. So I'm not going to bother with rolls and checks. I think it's pretty straightforward. We nail through one slat, nail through a second slat, and snap off a section of doorway, creating a big old hole. Maybe not quite big enough for someone to get through with ease, especially if there's zombies essentially cramming their way forward. Now this is where perhaps the clerics can clear the way a little bit. They'll step forward and invoke the names of their patron saints and drive the zombies back into the darkened corners of the room beyond, allowing us to essentially smash off and clear up the rest of what's remaining of the door here so that we have ingress to the room. So there's got to be a way out of this room. Right, so checking the sandbox generator, we've got additional doors. So that's a d12 roll. So there's going to be a minimum of 1. 5 is 1. And where is it? That's a d6 roll. 1 directly ahead. So we'll roll a d6 to see on which of these squares the door is located. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it's there. Just to get this out of the way, we'll roll to see whether it is locked or not. No, this one isn't. Alright, cool. So we've got 6 zombies to deal with here. Alright, so I've had a little bit of a break. Cleared away the table to set up this little dealie here. And consequently, forgot to write down the number of zombies. I thought it was 6, so I'm just going to go with 6. If it was more or less, oh well. That's the chaos of the underworld. So I don't think there's any point in rolling surprise. As I was saying, it'll break off. As you can see, even with this as an example, if it'll focus. So it has, let's say, 4 slats, somewhat reinforced. So if we set up little iron spikes, we'll break off maybe 1 or 2 of these. Enough for a zombie to poke its arms through and be of little consequence. Not big enough for them to squeeze through and plop out for us to deal with one by one. Yeah, because that makes a lot of noise and a lot of time is spent setting this up, hammering it in, ordering old Cuddy to go, yeah! So the zombies all pile up, like so, as indicated by these tokens here. I'll put the door there. So they can only reach as far as their arms go out, but as luck would have it, I do have a couple of clerics at hand. So they will make a turn check. Being first level clerics, they need a 9 in order to successfully turn the zombies. First of all, let's reorder the party so that our clerics are as close as possible to the zombies without actually being close enough to be scratched or hurt by them. One thing I'll notice in the lurid red torchlight is that these zombies have what appear to be relatively new armor. It's not all rusted and covered in filth, as you would expect from zombies in an abandoned dungeon for goodness knows how long. Let's get to the business at hand, shall we? So we'll start with Cordelia, needing a 9+. Hey, look at that. Very nice. Let's hope that she rolls high for the actual number of hit dice of zombies turned. Okay, not so good. So that's 5. That's essentially 2 zombies that will flee. And let's just put them as far away as possible. Is that in camera? Not quite. Well, basically at the edge of the room. And let's see how Helig does. An 8, just short by 1. So it's not as successful as I had hoped. So hit points. That's probably something you want to see. So they're 2 hit die creatures. So that'll be 6 hit points apiece. Right, so the turning didn't go as successfully as I had planned. I thought maybe I could clear most, if not all of them, but as it turns out, only 2 of them fled. So the next idea I had was, okay, we'll just stand and shoot with the sling wielders, because I'm not going to waste arrows. They're numbered, whereas the slings have a near infinite amount of shots. Being a mine, there'll be plenty of pebbles and rocks and so forth, and at this basically point blank range, it shouldn't be too much of an issue to hit the zombies and just wear away at them. But then I thought, no, that's boring as well. So I'm going to go with the idea of throwing one of the flasks at the lintel made of stone. So there'll be some splash and some wastage, but most of it should runnel down the wooden door. And then throw another one at the base of the doorway to create a nice little puddle. So I'll get my 2 strongest warriors to do that. I don't think that any rolls should be involved to check. It's not like they're gonna fumble and swallow or something by accident. So that's done. The zombies are just gonna be flailing with their arms through the doorway there. And then what we're gonna do is essentially waste a torch. That's fine though. Use flint and tinder and set it on fire and then toss it at the pool. See if the door catches fire, and then the zombies beyond, namely these 3, will take a bit of damage. And I've decided that yes, they're undead, but they still have some sort of self-preservation. See, it would be different if they were under the control of a necromancer or some sort of vampire or other undead. Then its will would prevail and they would just act like the automatons they are and fight to the death. But now that they're essentially free they don't want to be destroyed. I was going to say died, but they're already dead, but you know what I mean. So what I'll do is each will take 1 round of burning, just enough to remind them to step back, and then they'll just stand there, I guess, waiting to see what happens next. And then obviously the whole area is going to fill with smoke, and that's going to be the end of the session, I think, because the party is going to escape out the dungeon. So let's give it a 60% chance that the fire will take. And yes, with an 0.2, that's a 2%. That is well under 60. So the fire does catch. I'll mark off both flasks. So that means that the lamp literally has no more flasks to refill, and we've already used up about half of it. So we've got 2 hours left of lamp oil. And then yeah, the zombies that are right next to the fire will take a little bit of fire damage. So the one on the far left will take 4 damage. The one in the middle will take 4 damage. That's nice. Soften them up. And then the lucky last one will take 3. Not bad. I'm just going to head straight back to the castle because that's going to be the end of the session. Thanks if you've gotten this far and watched all the way through. That way we will have, I don't know, however much time elapses, because remember I'm doing the 1-to-1 time thing. So if every day that passes in real time, 1 day passes in game time. And by then I'm sure that everyone will be fit and hale and healthy and ready to explore the dungeon further. These being undead, the zombies aren't really going anywhere. They're just going to stand there till something provokes them. So that's easy to run. And other than that, I think that was a pretty successful initial delve, so to speak. I mean, just a wandering monster encounter and 1 room encounter. I haven't rolled for treasure yet, because that's what it's all about after all. It's not just bashing these monsters, but it's taking the treasure that they're guarding. Because that's where the real XP is. I mean, I got 100 XP from killing 10 skellies, divided by 6. That doesn't amount to a hill of beans. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time.
Chin ass!